life and faith of Sister Wilhelmina. Today on The Simple Truth, we consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong, chaste heart of Saint Joseph. I'm your host, Jim Havens, and our guest today is Royce Hood, Catholic husband and father, executive producer, and director of Incorruptible, the life and faith of Sister Wilhelmina, which he is here to talk about today. You can learn more by going over to incorruptiblemovie.com. That's incorruptiblemovie.com. Royce, welcome to The Simple Truth. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Jim. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, yeah. Great
doing very well, Jim.
Here with.
Great.
Yeah, I've got you. Yeah, great blessing to have you with us. And as we dive in, I guess first, can you share a little bit of the personal story related to the film? What kind of leads you personally up to this project? What can you share with us?
Wow, that's a big question, Jim. I'll try to get into the details of that, but keep it concise for you because it's really a big spiritual journey. The whole story probably would be a movie itself, how we got to the place, personally and physically and spiritually where we felt like we wanted to be a part of this story. Leading into it, I think we have to go back to the year 2021. My wife and I were expecting at the time our sixth child. Actually, it would have been 2020 when we found out. And at about 20 weeks, we discovered that the baby had something called Potter's syndrome, which means no kidneys. And because there's no kidneys, amniotic fluid won't be present in the womb. And because there's no amniotic fluid, the baby's lungs won't develop. And then there's bladder issues and spine issues and heart issues. And every time that we thought that maybe there was a medical solution to save our baby, we discovered that there was another issue. And it became very clear that we found out he was a boy. We named him Fulton. That Fulton just wasn't made for this world. And that was my wife's realization. And I shared that with her in a lot of prayer. And we enjoyed every minute of that nine months that we had Fulton with us in the womb. And he was stillborn actually on Good Friday in the year 2021. Now, why do I tell that heartbreaking story? And in many ways to us, it was difficult, but it wasn't heartbreaking. We have an intercessor now in heaven, which is a beautiful thing. During our pregnancy, every single night, my wife would put on this beautiful angelic music and she would pray the rosary, and she wanted Fulton to hear and to recognize what the sound of heaven would sound like. And that part chokes me up a bit to think about it because it's so beautiful and so courageous for her to do that for her son and for our son. Well, fast forward. All right. So every single night we listen to this beautiful angelic music. Fast forward a couple of years. I'm doing work. I'm an attorney. I've been involved in a few films, involved in a lot of pro-life ministries throughout the years. And we get a phone call that, hey, you need to come over to Gower, Missouri. They discovered this nun and it looks like she's incorrupt. And our sister-in-law, Jim, lives just maybe 40 minutes south of where Gower, Missouri is in Excelsior Springs. And so we, it's a bit of a interesting story, but we jumped in her car and we just drove over. And upon arriving in Gower, we saw Sister Wilhelmina laying in state. She was laying in the Abbey Chapel at that time. This is before the story went viral, before people really knew about it. There was just a few, maybe a dozen people on the grounds besides the sisters, just praying and venerating. It really looked as if you were going to awake, and to see Sister's body laying there so peaceful and beautiful, and then really she was just so beautiful. It looked like, it's hard to believe she had died actually 4 years prior to that, and she had been buried. And so as we were praying, I just felt really moved, like, who are you? The mystery of incorruptibility is interesting, and I love to tell stories. I have this creative mind, but what fascinated me most was not the mystery of her incorruptibility, but the mystery of who she was and what did you believe in? What did you love? What did you enjoy? Where did you come from? And those are the questions that came to my mind. I really prayed about it. We went into the gift shop and we discovered some CDs on this little kiosk area, and all the gifts in the gift store support this beautiful abbey for the Benedictine sisters in Gower. And it was none other than the very music that my wife had played every single night during our pregnancy with Fulton. And when I saw that, I felt this instant feeling that, like, wow, I feel so connected to Sister Wilhelmina already. and in ways like it's like the spiritual connection that's hard to understand, that probably only a person of faith can understand, because it's difficult to articulate as well. And I felt like, wow, I want to tell your story. So I approached the sisters, and at the time, actually, I was just imagining a relatively short 15-minute documentary on who she was, do some interviews, get some footage, and call it a day. And in many ways, looking back, I created that product, but we didn't release it. That would have been the easier route. But as I started learning more about Sister Wilhelmina, we started discovering these amazing moments in her life, which I'll tell you about more in a few minutes, but made us realize, some people came together as a team, that we need to do something bigger for her. It needs to be more of a feature-length docudrama. We need to reenact some moments from her life and really tell her story in a way that's visually stunning and beautiful, just like her life was.
Yeah, incredible. Royce Hood is
So that's a bit
us.
of the background.
Yes, yeah, incorruptiblemovie.com. And before we get into more on you introducing us to Sister Wilhelmina and sharing some of her life with us, what about the film? Where does it stand currently? Just so we can give some orientation to folks, even right off the bat here, of what they can do to help support this project and where it currently stands.
Yeah, right now, the biggest thing we need at the moment is prayers to get the film done. We filmed for about 2 years. It's a little over 2 years now in production, which seems like a really long time, but it's amazing. If you had talked to me 2 years ago, I would have told you we'd have this thing done in 6 months. But when you're dealing with a lot of different people trying to coordinate schedules for interviews and different shoots and things like that, it's amazing how long it takes. And then some of the film crew that we're working with gets other projects, and everybody that's involved. There's several people that are just a part of this as a labor of love, so they're giving their time when they can, but everybody has families, so they have work and different obligations. So pray for us right now if you can. That's what we need. We have enough footage to finish the film. We are hoping to do 1 or 2 more scenes that we will film as soon as God's providence allows. And what I mean by that is it does take some money to do that and to film some of the scenes that we want to do. If we're not able to do them the way we want, we'll improvise. And the ultimate goal here is to tell this story in a manner that is fitting for Sister Wilhelmina's life. So prayers is what we need first and foremost. The next step, after we are able to hopefully finish a couple more little scenes that we want to do, would be to go to editing. And editing is going to be a really, really intense proposition. We have hundreds of hours of footage from around the country and some beautiful things. I have personally been going through as much of that footage as I can and archiving the different scenes and different interviews for the sisters, because when the film is done, they're going to get a hard drive with everything, even if it doesn't make it into the film, so that they have it all. It's theirs ultimately. But we are selecting the scenes and piecing together. We have a really cool storyboard that sort of starts out with Sister as a young lady discerning, and then it kind of hops around a little bit. We go back to her grandmother pre-Civil War. We go to like the 60s and 70s, and so there's so many really cool elements of her story that we're hoping to share. And so that process is a bit complex. We will soon, at some point, we will officially launch a new crowdfunding campaign that's not launched yet, but that will be designed specifically for the editing and the finalization piece that we need to get this thing done. And then once it's done, we are in talks with a great distributor that I am very confident will take the film, and we should be able to get it in a number of theaters. The idea is about 700 theaters around the country. I have another film actually that's going to be in about 700 theaters sometime next year. A bit of a different story, but that I'm a producer on. So it's the same distributor. So yeah, there's a really neat opportunity here. One, we're going to be telling the story of Sister Wilhelmina, this devout woman who started, people don't realize she was in her 70s when she started the Benedictines in Gower, Missouri, which is amazing. They went on to create 4 albums, I think 5 or 6 by now, but 3 of which were in the Billboard Top 10 chart. They have over 20 million streams and counting on Spotify. These contemplative sisters in Gower, Missouri have touched hearts all over the world through their prayers, through their singing, and through their silence, really.
Wow. Yeah, incredible. Royce Hood is with us, executive producer and director of Incorruptible, The Life and Faith of Sister Wilhelmina. Again, you can learn more by going to incorruptiblemovie.com. You can even see an initial trailer there that is quite impressive. Again, incorruptiblemovie.com. And so, Royce, just to clarify, that story that you told earlier, going into the gift shop, seeing the CD with the music, so that was actually that particular order, the Benedictine sisters themselves. It wasn't just that they were selling the same music that you had been listening to. They were the ones that actually created that music, correct?
Yeah, Sister Wilhelmina, I think, probably would have been featured. There's a number of albums that we listened to, but yeah, it was them. It was the sisters. Just such a beautiful connection. You know, it's interesting when you have faith. One of the beauties, I think, is to be able to recognize those little graces that we receive. Some people would look at that as a coincidence, but it's clearly something bigger.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, we're going to dive back in with Royce when we get back and learn about the life of Sister Wilhelmina as well, straight from one who's been studying it and is going to be sharing it with the world through this new film. So what a great opportunity we have to hear it straight from Royce. If you've never heard of Sister Wilhelmina before, this is going to be a great opportunity for you. But even if you have, I'm sure there are going to be even greater insights that come out today that are going to be quite wonderful. So stay tuned for all of that. And as we head into the break, think about those little bits of providence that God has unfolded in your own life. Maybe we can just enter into the break with great gratitude in our hearts for Almighty God and all that He is doing and continues to do and will do for us. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Royce Hood. He is executive producer and director of Incorruptible, The Life and Faith of Sister Wilhelmina, which is a feature-length docudrama inspired by the life and faith of Sister Wilhelmina. You can find more information on it and support the good work over at incorruptiblemovie.com. That's incorruptiblemovie.com. We're going to get right back to it with Royce in just a moment. But first, if you are buying or selling a home, there's an easy way to help the Station of the Cross at the same time. Real Estate for Life has 1,400 experienced, morally grounded agents in the U.S. and Canada. Visit realestateforlife.org to find a Christ-centered, experienced realtor near you. And don't forget to mention the Station of the Cross. All right, Royce, for those who don't know her story, who was Sister Wilhelmina?
Yeah, Sister Wilhelmina was really, really interesting. That's a generic way of saying, like, literally her life was amazing. In many ways, she is a story for our times. She was, of course, of African-American descent. She was a woman. She grew up during segregation and was raised Catholic. In fact, when she was born in St. Louis, Missouri, when she was a young girl, the churches were still segregated. So her and her family, if they went to a multi-ethnic church, they would be required to sit in the back, for example. And her family was actually extremely devout and helped to create a school and a parish in St. Louis. One of the stories that I love from her childhood was that although she grew up during that segregation and during a lot of the struggles and experienced a lot of the struggles that occurred, in her lifetime, she never allowed things like race or politics to really divide her or to distract her from her love for our Lord. And I think that's really largely due to her family and the faith that her parents had. There's a story in one of the scenes that we call Back of Church, which is in the book God's Will. In fact, the book God's Will right now is probably the best way that your listeners can learn about her, and they can support the Benedictines of Mary, Queen of the Apostles in Gower, by buying that book at their website. If they just look for Benedictines of Mary in Gower, they'll find it. God's Will is a wonderful book of letters and poems and little bits of Sister's life. So, Back of Church, as a young girl, there's a story of a young sister, Wilhelmina. Her name was Mary Elizabeth, and she asked her mom, why do we have to receive Jesus last? Because of course they had to sit in the back of the church. And her mom looks at her and whispers, Mary Elizabeth, you're receiving the Lord. What difference does it make if you receive the Lord first or last? And statements like that were so simple and but yet so profound. And they had such a huge impact on Mary Elizabeth's life. She knew at a young age that she wanted to be a sister. In fact, she had, hand wrote a letter to a certain Mother Superior at a certain order, which we'll talk about more in the film. And it was like, hey, I'm ready. I'm 13 years old. I'm ready to go. I can pack my bags. I can be there in a week. And of course, she was too young at the time, but she was ready. And she was very serious about that. There's some really amazing mystical experiences that she had as a child that we'll talk about again more and hopefully be able to illustrate in the film. One of them is particularly beautiful, where she's receiving communion and looks up and sees something. Excuse me. She sees something and she smiles. And later she recounts to her friends, wasn't he beautiful? He's so handsome. How could I say no? And they said, well, what are you talking about? She's like, well, our Lord appeared to us. He was there by the altar. And everybody looks at her like, what are you talking about? And she recounts later, she go again, he was so handsome. How could I say no? And he asked her a question. He said, will you be mine? And so that scene that we are producing is called Will You Be Mine? And it's just such a profound mystical experience. And there's other moments like that in her life, which are the way I would describe them is the things that you would read about of experiences that saints would have had in their lives. And this is a woman that lived in our lifetime not that long ago, who created a community that is now in 4 locations around the world, which is phenomenal. When I first started working on this project, the Benedictines had 2 homes. Now they have 4. Because they're receiving so many inquiries of qualified women that they're bursting at the seams with young vocations.
Wow. Absolutely incredible. Yeah, Royce Hood is with us talking about the film about Sister Wilhelmina that is currently in production, soon hopefully to be in post-production. You can learn more over at incorruptiblemovie.com. That's the title of the film as well, Incorruptible, The Life and Faith of Sister Wilhelmina. And just amazing. I do want to also reiterate what you had just mentioned there about the book. If people do want to get the book, God's Will, The Life and Works of Sister Mary Wilhelmina, foundress of the Benedictines of Mary, Queen of Apostles, by her community, you can go over to their website, benedictinesofmary.org. That's benedictinesofmary.org. You can find that there, as well as some other great stuff in the gift shop. They have some beautiful holy cards and things. And so that's an option. That's a resource that's out there for you, benedictinesofmary.org. But you mentioned earlier also, well, actually, you know what, before I even get to there, I do just want to ask a follow-up question about something that I never really thought about before, which you are mentioning here about segregation in the U.S. and that would have been even inside of Catholic churches. I guess that just never occurred to me. I guess I always just had the assumption that, well, surely, that wouldn't be going on inside the Catholic parishes, but that actually historically is the way it was. So they actually did have segregation inside the churches. Is that right?
Yeah, I think it's geographic, and there would have been some, state-specific political distinctions that may have dictated when and where that happened and the extent of it. But yeah, St. Louis, when she was born, the churches there were segregated. And that, at some point, obviously that changed. That's an interesting subject that we do touch upon, but we don't focus a ton of time on it. But it's really interesting to think about. Actually, there's another scene, even, speaking to her heritage of her grandmother was a slave on a plantation. And the name of this scene is called Breaking the Chains. And it's very symbolic for a number of reasons. It's historical, but there's also a bigger spiritual meaning to it that people will hopefully get without me explaining it. But her grandmother, at some point working on the plantation, converts to Catholicism and is baptized into the church. And she's a slave on this plantation. And shortly thereafter, the plantation owner, maybe he was a part of that baptism or he finds out about it. He says, I'm breaking the chains. You are now free. I cannot keep a child of God in bondage. And so that act of baptism broke those chains, which is, again, there's a symbolism there that's bigger than that historical story. I think that's relevant for baptism today in many ways. But wow, it's hard to imagine, first of all, was the plantation owner Catholic, and did he really have slaves? Is that something Catholics participated in? We don't know the manner. Some plantations were different than others. All of them were terrible to hold people in shackles. Some treated slaves better than others. But wow, it's just hard to imagine a point in our time where that was an acceptable thing. But nonetheless, it's part of the history. But the beauty there is, again, breaking the chains. Baptism has a way of doing that. And that's a point that we're hoping to drive home with that scene in the film.
Yes, yeah. What a terrible and sad chapter in our nation and in our church. Now, for folks in the church that were going along and active in these racist practices, these dehumanizing practices, that would not have been consistent with the actual teachings of the church. The teachings of the church are very much opposed to racism, clearly. And yet, because of maybe various pressures or just the time and people being swept up in the world, even going against the teachings of the church within the church, right? And so there are various aspects of this. We can look back in judgment, but the fact is that these things still continue on. We see it today, certainly in many ways, but specifically, I would say, as the nation as a whole, a lot of parallels between what was going on with slavery and racism and segregation and all of that, where we can look back and say, what a terrible time in the nation that it was, how they get it so wrong. But then with abortion today, hopefully we'll get to the end of this and folks will look back and say, how'd they get it so wrong? And so we've got to work for that. And I know that's something that you're also very active in, the pro-life work that you do. Can you just share a little bit on that, just so people do have a reference point for your background as well, just a little bit on the pro-life background?
Yes, no, that's a great point, and I agree with that 100%. It's amazing how we're fallen, right? So we get it wrong so much of the time, and this world confuses and distracts, and the ultimate answer is that life is precious and it's a gift, and when we think of it that way, it becomes easier to rationalize the pro-life opinions. My pro-life journey, just like faith, it's a winding road. I wasn't always like adamantly pro-life. I think the position I had before I went to Ave Maria School of Law in Naples, the position that I had for many years was like, well, I'm pro-life, but I'm not really comfortable telling other people. But it's definitely a position that I have. I'm against abortion, and that's that. It wasn't until I got to law school and I started studying things like Roe v. Wade. And really, I met my wife the second day of law school, and she was going out and praying outside of Planned Parenthood on the weekends. And I started going with her because, for the main reason, I didn't want anybody else to stand next to her and to pray with her. So it was sort of a selfish reason. But in doing so, I started praying the rosary outside of Planned Parenthood and started seeing, these women going in and realizing what they were going in for, and then seeing them come out just a changed person, damaged and wounded and just heartbroken. And there's something happened in me where I was like, wow, I want to speak out. I want to help people. I want people to realize that this isn't what they have to do. They don't have to go through those doors. And so we went to the March for Life. The first time I went was in 2010. And I was just a first year law student at that time. And it was life-changing experience. At that time, there was probably hundreds of thousands of people going to DC. And, the guy that started 40 Days for Life, David B. Wright and Sean Carney. There's Abby Johnson, a recent convert from the pro-choice world. There's, at the time, it was all these priests and bishops and all these people that I was like, wow, they're doing such amazing things and they're speaking out. And look at all these young people. I want to be a part of this movement. So the next year, I tried to get backstage at the March for Life, and the marshals, the Knights of Columbus fellas were like, no, we don't know who you are. I'm like, oh, I'm with Ave Maria School of Law. They're like, yeah, we don't care. You can't come backstage. But the reason why I wanted to go backstage is I wanted to meet all these pro-life leaders and figure out how I could be a part of what they were doing. So the following year, I got there really, really early in the morning. I got there before all the security guys got to the March for Life, and I sort of snuck in backstage, but I wasn't just loafing around. I was helping. I was like helping carry boxes and just volunteering, like helping to set up. Nellie Gray was so amused. That's the founder of the March, that she actually invited me to join the board, and I can share a little bit more of that pro-life journey with you on the other side of the break if you'd like.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that'd be fascinating to hear. And yeah, we're very blessed to have Royce Hood here with us today. And we will get into more as well about Sister Wilhelmina. There's much more to share with you. And so we'll talk about that. But yeah, just amazing. Always great to meet new people and just know that there are people out there doing great work, participating with God's grace. God is changing hearts and minds, drawing people to him all the time. He's always trying to draw us to him more and more. So do we say yes? Do we give that surrender, that full surrender? Let's recommit ourselves now as we head into the break and let the Lord draw us all closer. We're going to be right back with Royce Hood. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with Royce Hood, our guest today. He is executive producer, director of Incorruptible, the life and faith of Sister Wilhelmina, incorruptiblemovie.com to learn more and to support the good work. Also, you can head on over to Benedictinesofmary.org to learn more about Sister Wilhelmina as well. The book there, God's Will, is a great way to do that. Also, all the great resources you'll find there, including that beautiful music that they create that we talked about earlier in the program as well. All right, we're going to get back to Royce, but first, before we do, don't forget about iCatholic Mobile for your mobile phone needs. When you subscribe to iCatholic Mobile, you help fund the Station of the Cross. Check out iCatholic Mobile, iCatholicMobile.com. All right, Royce, yeah, finish sharing with us a bit more. We were interrupted by that break, but share with us more on that pro-life journey and what happened next.
You know, it's funny. Sometimes we have plans and those plans change, and God makes it very clear. In many ways, the short of it is I stumbled into the pro-life movement. It was not something I intended to do. It was not something I intended to be involved with. But in going to the march and sort of sneaking in backstage, I became friends with Nellie Gray. Long story short, she ultimately was so amused that I snuck in and was there. We got to be friends, and she invited me to join the board of the March for Life. And there I am, fresh out of law school in 2012, sitting on a board with the likes of Patrick Kelly and Jeannie Mancini and some of these just great people and great leaders. Pat Kelly, of course, would go on to be the Supreme Knight of the Knights of Columbus. Jeannie became the president of the March for Life. And Nellie passed away. I was blessed to be a pallbearer at her funeral. And during the time that I knew her, we started speaking about every week. She reminded me of my great grandmother who had a big impact on my life and she had died a decade earlier. And I learned so much from Nellie, staunchly pro-life. One of the first female attorneys in the United States, was a World War II veteran. And during, when Roe v. Wade happened, her life changed. She basically left everything she was doing and focused solely on overturning that decision. And when I spoke with her, I don't know that she ever thought it was possible. She believed and hoped that it would happen, but she certainly didn't think it would happen in her lifetime. And I remember she told me once she received an award for something, and somebody asked her, we want to honor you. We want to honor your work and give you an award. And she said, well, what are you giving me an award for? I haven't accomplished anything. And they were floored. Well, you've created one of the biggest civil rights movements in the world. The March has hundreds of thousands of people. There's marches all over the world now. And she, humbly appreciated the gesture, but said, no, when we overturn Roe, when millions of babies aren't dying every year, then we can celebrate. But then a few minutes later, there's going to be more work to do, because the culture of life is the struggle. It's not about just ending abortion. It's about convincing people that abortion is completely wrong. And until we can change that mentality, we haven't won anything. So I got involved on the March. I created an annual conference called the Law of Life Summit that happens every year. Now, the reason why I'm sharing this is, as I'm learning, fast forward, about Wilhelmina, one of the things that was so cool when she first entered religious life, she became an oblate, which they have a beautiful home in Baltimore. And she would regularly attend Mass at Old St. Mary's in Washington, D.C. And that would have been during the same time that none other than Nellie Gray, the foundress of the March for Life, would have been attending daily Mass at Old St. Mary's in downtown Washington, D.C. And so, wow, another beautiful spiritual connection. This woman that I greatly admired, who I believe is also a saint. In fact, there's a bishop right now that I'm in touch with that is looking into a cause for Nellie Gray herself, which is amazing. Imagine for a moment that scene. You walk this beautiful church, and there's Nellie Gray on one side, and there's this little black nun on the other side, and they're just doing their thing. They probably weren't chatting. They probably weren't chit-chatty at all. They were both reverent women, but I'm sure they acknowledged each other. They smiled. Wow, that is a moment that I plan on including in this film, as a very subtle nod to my friend Nellie, and to somebody that I'm sure Sister Wilhelmina is friends with as well now in heaven. So yeah, that's part of the pro-life story. By the way, it's important to note, actually, at the grounds of Gower, Missouri, at the Abbey, for the sisters, they have a beautiful, and it's really quite breathtaking, little cemetery for miscarried babies and dead babies, and there's a number of them there, and it's so peaceful. And they're buried just a few feet away from the original burial spot for where Wilhelmina was buried. Now people come and they gather the soil from where Wilhelmina was buried, which is just, again, a few feet away from these little innocent burial area.
Well, yeah, Royce Hood is with us, and yeah, thank you for sharing all of that. Yeah, so much to ask, but I want to make sure that you get any other points in that you want to share about the life of Sister Wilhelmina today. What else do you think would be good for people to know?
You know, we've got a great team. I need to. We're looking for people that are interested in helping to edit scenes for the film. We're using some technology. If there's people out there that are really technologically savvy, sort of cutting edge cinematography type stuff, I'd love to hear from them. If we've got a great father-son out of Texas that have driven up to Oklahoma and different places to film for us. Again, this is such an important story. I firmly believe Sister Wilhelmina is a saint, but she has not been declared as such. There is not officially a cause of canonization open for her yet. But I believe this film, by sharing her story, is going to help with that. And in fact, it will. When a cause is officially opened, the Holy See will utilize interviews and different things that we have obtained as part of the investigation process. And in fact, it might even help that process expedite it a bit, because we'll have done a lot of work. We're investigating alleged miracles. By the way, I say alleged. I'm an attorney by trade. If I hear of something profound and a miracle, I think to myself, if I were to go to a courtroom, could I prove this to a court? Could I prove this to a judge and to a jury? And I have to say, first of all, incorruptibility. I believe, hands down, that we can prove that there is no explanation whatsoever outside of divine for the status of her body. I was in the room during the forensic exam. I filmed in there. I was listening to the doctors. The bishop has since issued a letter saying there was no natural means. There's I don't know how much time we have, but there's 3 ways that a body can be mummified. One would be artificially, you put wax or embalming, or you do chemicals, things like that. The second way is like sort of this natural process where you're in like an airtight tomb or Antarctica or something where the climate cannot affect the body, right? And you're preserved because of that. And the third way is, we don't know. It's like this miracle. The first 2 have been ruled out. There was no chemicals whatsoever. They did a full forensic exam. Nothing was detected. She was buried in a simple, beautiful wooden coffin. The wooden coffin itself was cracked, and there was mold and fungus growing on the inside of the coffin. The cloth lining was disintegrated, as it should have been. So there was air. It wasn't climate controlled. The body was exposed to the elements in Missouri: cold, hot, wet, dry. and yet is incorrupt. And another interesting point, it's not just her body that was incorrupt. Sister Wilhelmina fought rigorously in faith and humility for her habit, the beautiful that the sisters wear, this heavy wool, object that is so important to their vocation. Her habit was also not disintegrated, and that should have disintegrated in months. Certainly within a year, it would have been gone before the body even, and it was intact. And you can actually go and see her body now. It's in a beautiful glass case. And just next to her body, you can see a portion of her habit that she was buried in. And it's just profound. So you asked, is there anything I'd want people to think about and know? Well, first of all, we need help. If you're interested in being involved in this film, either as a prayer warrior, or if you have a technical skill in film or something along those lines that you'd like to offer up, we'd be happy to talk to you. It's a grassroots movement to promote this thing as well. So if you're interested in helping once we're ready to get the word out, and maybe help us rent out theaters and things like that, that'll be helpful as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when it comes to the incorruptibility of her body and the world was stunned as those reports came out. I remember seeing those reports. I had never heard of her before, but yet here it was. She was found incorrupt. What is your sense of what does it mean? Why not just the the how does this happen scientifically? It seems to certainly be miraculous as you laid out, but why do you think God does this? Why was Sister Wilhelmina's body incorrupt?
That is a question that I ask personally, nearly every single person that we've interviewed. We've asked that question to Cardinal Burke, Bishop Strickland, and countless other priests and lay people and experts. Why Sister Wilhelmina? All I can tell you is that you're going to have to watch the film to get the answer, because it's a beautiful answer, and there are multiple different versions of that answer. And so without spoiling that sort of punchline from the film, I'll say one thing. When a bishop, if you want to publish something within your diocese, the canonical proper way to do it is to go to the bishop and present it, and may I publish this, and the bishop will issue an imprimatur, and there is nothing contrary to the faith contained within these pages. Let it be published. Let it be published, right? Well, if you look at the saints that are incorrupt, and they're all saints, there's like 300 of them or so that we know about. By the way, I've researched it. There are other faiths that claim to have incorrupts, and almost all of them are like boxes of bones or wax bodies. I haven't found one that actually has a legitimate, worthy of belief, we can't explain this, the body is not decomposing, outside of the Catholic Church, which is quite interesting. But if you look at their lives, all of them were holy people. They're all saints. Sister Wilhelmina is not declared a saint yet, but I think incorruptibility is, in a way, God's imprimatur. He's putting his thumbprint on these people's life, and he's saying there's nothing contrary to the faith contained therein. Let it be published. Take a look at what they did. That's the way. Is that what it is? That's my answer to why. I don't know, but you'll get the better answer in the film.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah, we'll be staying tuned. And again, the more you support this effort, pray. And if you can support in some way, helping with the work, donating to the work, incorruptiblemovie.com to learn more and support this project, incorruptiblemovie.com. Royce, anything you can share with us about Sister Wilhelmina in terms of I guess about her life as a person, trying to help us to really see the person there, her faith, her daily life. What kind of person was she? Is there any one story or example that jumps out to you to help us to kind of get a sense of who she was?
Yeah, she was humble, very humble, but she was also very witty, and she had a great personality. And I must confess, I did not know her personally, right? These are things that I've learned from speaking to people that knew her. She was willing to do the most remedial of tasks, even though she was the foundress of this amazing community. And that's very similar to what we hear about, stories about like Mother Teresa. She would go visit a hospital or a mission, and the first thing she would do is make sure the bathrooms were clean. right? Like, wow, she has more important things to do, but no, that's important. Cleanliness and making sure that people are taken care of. Sister Wilhelmina was 100% devoted to her vocation as being a bride of Christ. And she loved the Lord so much, and she loved adoration and just had such reverence for the sacraments of the church. But she was also funny. There's some funny stories that were recounted that will some of the sisters share for us of just funny moments. And the sisters are, for Catholics, a lot of Catholics are sort of lukewarm when it comes to things like fasting, and we've discovered that there's a lot of different there's a spectrum of Catholicism that people fall in, right? They're your traditional, very orthodox, and you're more lukewarm. Sister Wilhelmina was really pretty hardcore in terms of fasting and prayer and humility, but she never bragged about that. One monk that we interviewed said she was loud through her silence. She inspired people just by her example and the way she treated and the way she prayed reverently without seeking attention. I know I hear music, so I know we're out of time, but there's so much more I'd love to share in the film.
Yes, well, we've got one more segment to go, so we'll be right back with Royce and that final segment, and we'll see what comes out there. We're surely some more great stuff, but yeah, this is wonderful to leave us with this heading into the break. That sense of humility, that maybe even heroic virtue of humility, perhaps, and also this devotion to vocation. We can certainly apply these good examples and ask for God's grace to help us in these ways. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Royce Hood. We're talking about the Incorruptible movie, incorruptiblemovie.com, which he is executive producer and director of. Again, it's entitled Incorruptible, The Life and Faith of Sister Wilhelmina. You can support the good work by going to incorruptiblemovie.com. We're going to get right back to Royce in a moment, but first, we're only 9 days away now from the National Men's March to abolish abortion and rally for personhood in Boston, Massachusetts. If you're anywhere nearby, if you can make the trip, if you're there in Boston, you got to commit, you got to be there. Only 9 days away. If you can't make it, maybe a good day to start a novena for this good effort, if you wouldn't mind being just 9 days away, but keep it in your prayers, if you would. That the light of Christ would shine bright in the darkness, and that we can raise some awareness, get the good word out, that we do in fact need to abolish abortion, and we do need to stand up for the personhood of all children from the earliest stages of development, and say, hey, it's right there in the 14th Amendment already, equal protection under the laws for all persons, due process, all of this. The original framers of that amendment, they did intend for that to include the unborn child as well. All the research and scholarship has been done. Robert George, John Finnis, Josh Craddock, all of these great legal minds who have put forward the scholarship. But we need to get a grassroots effort to really raise awareness and to really stand up for the least of these. This is what we're trying to do with the National Men's March. All the information over at themensmarch.com. And again, if there's any way you can join us there on All Saints Day in Boston, Massachusetts, November 1st, we'd love to have you join us there, but at least please keep it in prayer. Again, themensmarch.com for all the information. All right, Roy. So let's we started with the personal. Let's actually swing back to that, if you don't mind, if you're willing to share a little bit. You've shared with us quite a bit about Sister Wilhelmina, but what about the effect that it's had on you in being faithful to this call that has emerged, where you've said yes to this call to be studying and sharing the story of Sister Wilhelmina? How have you been personally affected, changed in the process?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. Like I said, when I first started off, my intention was just to create a short little 15-minute picture, which would be relatively simple and would take a very small amount of resources and time to do, something that could be easy. And we will still probably do that for the sisters. They can have it playing in the gift shop or something on loop. But again, as we discovered the life of Sister Wilhelmina, and really as I started to get to know her, I feel like she's sort of, we kind of joke, like she's kept us really busy. And she has a way of doing that. And they say saints choose you sometimes. And again, for your listeners, she's not declared a saint, but I consider her to be one just based on the experiences I've had. She has a way, her life has a way of bringing people to the Lord and making you want to be better and making you want to examine your own life and to just sort of look at things in a manner that she did. In many ways, she looked at things in such a simple way. She was so focused on, her life was so ordered on Christ that she did not let the outside world really distract her. And it's so easy for all of us in the outside world to be distracted. I mean, I'm a father. I have a fairly large family that I have to support. And so, the last couple of years have been interesting. It's funny when another film producer said, you're going to, if you do this right, if it becomes a bigger, like a feature length means it'll be appropriate for movie theaters, which is what we'd like for it to be. There's going to be a number of starts and stops, and there'll be periods where it seems like just things aren't happening, but God's preparing you during that time. And there's things that are happening. And I didn't understand that at the time, because this is the biggest project I've done. I've been involved in probably about a dozen or so independent films throughout the years, but in a different capacity. This story is so big and so interesting. I actually think once the docudrama is done, there are some groups that have expressed interest in actually creating a feature-length film, like a Hollywood-style movie about her life, which would be very appropriate because her life was so incredible. So Sister Wilhelmina has, we asked for her intercession in our nightly prayers as a family for many things, and I do think she's an intercessor. I think there's been so many profound stories of her intercessions in other people's lives that we've encountered and that we've investigated that are quite amazing. Healings and things like that are just unexplainable. So I think to answer your question, Sisters kept me busy. And it's interesting. The last few months, I've been we're down in Ave Maria helping a pro-life organization with some really neat, very important ministry down here in Southwest Florida. In between helping with movies like Incorruptible, and it seems like things are coming together now. Where it's okay, we're about to ramp up production. In fact, we've got a really pretty active Facebook page for Incorruptible movie. I think it's just at Incorruptible movie. People can look for it on Facebook. There's about 3,500 followers on there. And it was just posted like 2 days ago that production is picking up again. We've got a mass scene that we plan on filming in Gower. We're just waiting on dates from our film guy in Kansas City. And we've got like one or two other interviews that we need to do in person and a couple of little reenactments, but that will wrap up the production. And the plan is to start posting some of the screenshots from from that production on Facebook and on the main websites that people can follow it. Social media is an easy place to promote because people are fairly active on there. So I would encourage people to kind of look for Incorruptible movie on social media, particularly on Facebook and again on our website.
Terrific. Yeah. So, Royce, what can you share with us about your experience and maybe any recommendation you have for folks that might be thinking, hey, can I go visit the Abbey there, the Abbey of Our Lady of Ephesus, the Mother House in Gower, Missouri? It seems like many have gone to visit since the big story of Sister Wilhelmina's incorruptibility has emerged. What could you share about your experience there? What do you recommend?
It's beautiful. It's like a slice of heaven on earth. It's a holy place. What's amazing about the Abbey is that to get there, it's really in the middle of nowhere in Missouri. It is about an hour north of Kansas City, but you'll find that your cell phone doesn't work, and there's no internet and no TV and no distractions. And it's amazing. In fact, when the sisters first gave me permission to work on the film, it was right after the story went viral. They're like, can you get here and start filming this weekend? We think there might be thousands of people coming. The story is out and we can't control it anymore. And people are coming to see her. And when I went there, I ended up staying on the grounds for, I don't even remember. It was over probably a week just filming every aspect of it. And after a few days of of seeing all these people coming and praying and hearing, the sisters are singing their prayers and the Latin Mass and all these different aspects, I pinched myself like about a week in thinking like, am I dead? And like, it's just so heavenly. Like I feel such peace here. It doesn't seem real. That's how I would describe it. It's a weird feeling, but it's amazing. In fact, my family was blessed about a year ago before we came down to Florida. We have a home in Peoria, Illinois, but we've been in Florida for the last year on this project that I'm on. We had an opportunity to do a little retreat with the sisters, and they allowed us to stay at the guest house, and it's so worth it. So typically, the guest houses, I think for the family members of the sisters, it gets booked up really far in advance. So it's really hard to get into that, but anybody can go and visit. The sisters are so gracious. We just ask that you dress modestly when you go and respect what they do, because they're not out there looking for people to come in, but they're not going to turn you away. To the Benedictines, they treat everybody as if you're Christ, because they see Christ in everyone. So go, if you can, go pray with the sisters and see Sister Wilhelmina. They'd love to have you.
Yes, yeah, they have that great charism of hospitality. But what a blessing this has been this hour with you, Royce. Thank you so much again. Royce Hood, incorruptiblemovie.com. Great blessing. Thank you so much, and for all your good work, Royce.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, I want to just continue to invite everyone to pray for Royce, pray for his family, pray for this project, and support it if you can. If you can support the work in any way, incorruptiblemovie.com. But as you mentioned, the prayers are paramount. But again, all the information over at incorruptiblemovie.com. God bless you all.